Bud Not Buddy. This is still chapter 17. We're picking up, or chapter 19 rather. We're picking up on page 225. Okay. So we left off, we finished at the bottom of 224. So today, as we're reading, we're going to get a full resolution of our story. Remember that the resolution is the solution to the problem. So as we read the rest of chapter 19 together, think about what Bud's problem was and how it was resolved. So, Miss Thomas said, "Let me show you something, Bud." She took the frame out of my hands and said, "Watch this." She moved the picture up and down, right and left, then round in circles. "Do you see how her eyes are on you all the time? No matter which way you look at the picture, she's watching." It seemed like Mama was looking direct at me no matter where Miss Thomas put the picture. "I can keep this? I feel like I've been holding on to it until the rightful owner came along, and it looks to me like he's finally shown up. What took you so long, child?" Miss Thomas patted me underneath my chin. She said, "But, Bud, we've got a problem and I'm going to need your help with." "Uh-oh. You said you were 6 years old when your mother died?" "Yes, ma'am." "Okay, so that was 4 years ago." "Yes, ma'am." "You can remember how bad you felt when you first knew that she was gone, can't you?" "Yes, ma'am, 'cause it still feels the same." "Well, you've had 4 years to try and heal that scar, but it still hurts some of the time, doesn't it?" "Sometimes a lot." "I know, Bud, but remember your grandfather and I just found out that she passed. The hurt is brand new for us." Miss Thomas started swallowing. "And even though he hasn't seen her in 11 years, I know there isn't a day that goes by that he doesn't think about her. He'd never admit it, but there isn't one show that we give that he doesn't first look out into the audience, not to see how big the crowd is, but hoping that she'll be out there, hoping that she'd seen a flyer tacked to a telephone pole somewhere and would stop by to see him. He loved her so much, Bud." "Sorry, sweetheart." She took the hand she wasn't squeezing my fingers with and took out a handkerchief and blew her nose. "Those stones that he picks up everywhere he performs are for her. She must have been 4 or 5 years old. The band was getting ready to travel to Chicago for a week, and before we left, he asked her what she wanted him to bring back for her. He was thinking a doll or a dress or something, but she told him, 'A walk, Daddy. Bring me back a walk from Chicago.' So everywhere we went after that, he'd have to get her a walk. We'd write the city and the day we were there on them for her. He's got boxes of them upstairs, 11 years worth. So, Bud, I don't know how Herman is going to be feeling after this. That's where I need your help. You've got to remember that both Herman and I love your mother just as much as you did." This didn't seem like it could be true. Not just because it didn't seem like anyone could love my mother as much as I do, but because it didn't seem like Herman E. Calloway could love anyone at all. Miss Thomas said, "So if you can remember, Bud, be patient with him. That ornery old man upstairs is very, very hurt right now, and I just can't say where he's going to land after this news gets through blowing him around." Miss Thomas was starting to do that stingy-eyed blinking. "So we're going to have to give him some time. We're going to have to let him find out how he feels before—" Mr. Jimmy came into the kitchen. "Grace," he said, "he wants you." Herman E. Calloway was making everybody feel like they had the blues. It looked like Mr. Jimmy just wiped some tears from his eyes, too. Miss Thomas came around to my side of the table and gave me a hug. She said, "You okay?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Should I go see how he's doing?" "Yes, ma'am." She left the kitchen and Mr. Jimmy went into the living room. I picked Mama's picture up and put it back in the envelope. Mr. C chose a good name for his house, 'cause not a second went by before the back door came open and the dusky devastators of the Depression walked in, talking like it was going out of style. As soon as they saw me, they all got quiet. Doodoo-Bug said, "Hey, Sleepy LeBone, where's everyone at?" I didn't want to embarrass anyone by saying that all the grown folks were sitting all over the house sobbing their eyes out, so I said, "They're around." I remembered not to call the band Sir. Steady said, Well, it's you we wanted anyway. He put an old cardboard suitcase on the table and said, I told the fellas how hard you've been hitting that record and how proud I was of you, so we put a couple of nickels together. He acted like he was yelling into the other room. And Lord knows on the peanuts we get it was a real sacrifice. He slapped some skin with Dirty Deed, then started talking regular again. Anyway, the thug saw something at the pawn shop and we picked it up for you. Can I open it? The thug said, Well, if you don't, I don't know who will. Eddie slid the cardboard suitcase over to him in front of me. It looked worse than the one I used to carry around. One of the snaps on it was busted clean off and the other one was stuck. Steady, Eddie said. It's what's inside that's interesting. Just pull that snap real hard. I pulled on the snap and it came off right in my hand. The thug said, I knew it. The boy's just too country. He ain't used to handling fine merchandise. We should have given it to him in a paper bag. I opened the suitcase. Whatever it was wrapped up in crinkly, wrinkly newspapers. I started pulling newspapers off, and I could tell that their gift was real heavy. All of a sudden, a shiny new piece of gold showed through. I snatched more paper off and couldn't believe my eyes. The dusty devastators of the Depression had put their money together and had bought me a baby-sized horn like Steady Eddie's saxophone. Steady Eddie could see I was stuck, so he lifted it out of the suitcase and fished around in the bag for the mouthpiece, the neck, and the reed holder. He sucked the reed for a minute, put the horn together, then played it. Man, my horn sounded great. Eddie said, It's an alto, bud. There's a little rust in some of the seams, but that's to be expected with a horn this old. It's still got a good tone to it. This dent didn't throw her off too much. He showed me a big dent on the bottom part of my saxophone. I repatted, refelted, and resprung it. The rest is up to you. He reached in his pocket and took out a can that said Brasso on the side. Get you a rag and shine her up. A man should polish his own horn. I looked at my bandmates and said, Thank you very, very much. I'll practice on this so much that I'll be just as good as you guys are in about 3 weeks. Doo-Doo Bug said, Oh, now that's cold. I said, Really, I will. The band laughed, so I did too. Eddie said, Well, LeBone, I'll tell you what. Since you're so hot to get in this band, I better get you started on your lessons right away. He pulled a big silver watch that was tied up to a long chain out of his pocket and said, I'm going by Tyler's for a while now, but I'll be back around 7. If you got your axe polished up by then, I'll bring some sheet music along and we can get started. Sound good? His toothpick jumped with each word. Sounds great, Steady. Eddie took the strap off his neck and handed it to me. I put it on and Eddie handed me my saxophone for the very first time. It was the perfect weight. I said, Can I be excused? Dirty Deed said, What? You ain't gonna blow some notes? We want to hear what you got 3 weeks from now. I said, I'll let you hear me in 3 weeks when we're all on stage together. They laughed again, and the thug said, I'm gonna let you in on something. Sleepy LeBone, there's certain members of this band that you will be outplaying in 3 weeks. But it's gonna take you a whole lot longer to top me. On a real tip, it's gonna take you at least 10 years before you'll be able to even hold my drumsticks. Steady Eddie said, Yeah, and that's about 9 years and 10 months longer than you'll be with this band, thug. The thug said, Aw, man, you ain't gonna start that up again. You gotta let me know what you heard. I said, Can I be excused? And he said, Go ahead now on, Sleepy LeBone. I'll be back. I told my bandmates, Thank you again. Thank you very much. The thug said, Nothing to it, little man. Dirty Deed said, Now don't let that horn whip you, son. Doo-Doo Bug said, Our pleasure, Sleepy. Steady Eddie said, Man, get out of here. I picked up both of Mama's pictures, my horn and my can of Brasso, and ran up the stairs. When I got upstairs, I saw Herman E. Calloway's door was still open a crack. Miss Thomas's door was closed now, and I could hear the two of them in her room talking real soft to each other. I could have stood outside the door and listened if I wanted to, but that would have been rude. Besides, I didn't know for sure how long it would take me to polish up my new horn. I went into my mother's room and put my sax on the bed that Mama used to sleep in when she was a little girl. I put her smiling picture on the dressing table, then reached under her bed and pulled my sax case out again. I snapped the 2 silver snaps and started taking out all my things. I took my old blanket out and remade my bed with it. I wasn't going to need to carry it around with me any more. I opened the tobacco pouch and took out the rock that said Flint on it and set it on the bed. I took the pouch and the flyers and walked down the hall to Herman E. Calloway's room. Even though I could still hear him and Miss Thomas talking and boo-hooing in the room, I knocked on his door anyway. When no one answered, I opened it. He had one of those dressing tables with a mirror stuck on the back of it, too, so I walked real quick over to it and set the flyers in the bag of our 4 rocks down. I got out of his room as fast as I could. Whew, even though it was me who carried them around for all these years, you'd have to be a pretty big liar if you'd say those rocks and flyers really belonged to me. Herman E. Calloway's name was all over the flyers and writing was all over the rocks. Besides, the way he looked so shook up when he saw those rocks for the first time, I figured they meant more to him than they did to me anyway. I went back over to Mama's dressing table and opened the little drawer. I took one of those thumbtacks out and went back to Mama's bed. Next, I took the envelope that had her picture in it. I took out the picture of her riding the sad, saggy pony. I still couldn't see what she was so unhappy about. The misbegotten Moon Park looked like somewhere you could have a lot of fun. I poked the thumbtack into the top of Mama's picture and walked to the wall that she stuck the pictures of horses on. I put Mama's right amongst those ponies and horses she liked so much. I didn't need to carry that doggone picture around. This wasn't how I remembered Mama anyway. Mama was always excited and jumpy, not sad and poky like this little girl. Mama was kind of old when I met her, too. She wasn't young like this picture at all. The picture looked like it belonged. It's strange the way things turn out. Here I'd been carrying Mama around for all this time, and I'd finally put her somewhere she wanted to be, back in her own bedroom, back amongst all of her horses. I went back to the bed and picked up the flint rock. It was going to be enough. I didn't need those other things with me all of the time. I didn't need them to remind me of Mama. I couldn't think about her any more of where the 100 hours or even day and 1,000 days in every week. I couldn't think of my Mama any better than I already do. All I have to do is remember her hand on my forehead when she'd ask me something like, "Baby, are you sick? Have you got a temperature?" All I have to do is remember Mama letting me dry the dishes after she'd washed them, how she used to say no one in the world could dry a plate the way I could. All I'd have to do is take 2 or 3 deep breaths and think of all the books she'd read to me at night, and remember that no matter how long it took, she'd read until I went to sleep. Desmond Malone was right. I was carrying Mama inside me, and there wasn't anyone or anything that could take away from that or add to it either. The 1 rock from Flint would be enough. I set it in my sax case. I picked up my saxophone. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I wet the reed the same way I'd seen Steady Eddie do, then clamped it on my mouthpiece. I closed my eyes and counted to 10. If after I got to 10 I blew the horn and it sounded pretty good, I knew I'd be playing along with the Dusky Devastators of the Depression in a week or 2. If I didn't sound so good, it meant I'd have to practice for a couple of months before I'd be good enough to get on stage with them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I puffed my cheeks and blew as hard as I could. The saxophone only squeaked, squawked, and groaned, then sounded like it was making up the words Aronk and Ruzuka and Bolupa. Shucks, maybe I didn't puff my cheeks out right. Maybe I was blowing too hard. I counted again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This time the horn only squeaked, squawked, and groaned. It didn't sound like it was trying to make up any words. It sounded great. It wasn't perfect, like when Steady blew it, but I could tell that one day it was going to be. Something told me I could learn to play this. Something told me that these sounds were more than just bad notes. If you didn't have a real good imagination, you'd probably think those noises were sounds of some kid blowing a horn for the first time. But I knew better than that. I could tell that those squeaks and squawks of one door closing and another one opening. I looked at the picture of Mama and Miss Thomas gave me. Mama was looking right at me with that same soft smile. I know it's stupid to smile back at a picture, but I couldn't help myself. I know it's even stupider to talk to a picture, especially when I hadn't said anything to start a conversation. But I had to say, "Here we go again, Mama. Only this time, I can't wait." I closed my eyes and began practicing. Shucks, as good as things were going for me now, I'd bet you dollars to donuts that Steady Eddie was going to get here early.